Charlie, B Corp, who are they?
Well, B Corp, as you said, that 2006 US firm, which is assessing firms according to their environmental, social and governance profiles. How does the business do in that kind of progressive field of operations? Now, they certify companies who, in their own words, make a legal commitment not only to their shareholders, but also what they describe as stakeholders. And in order to make that assessment, they have a Standards Advisory Council, which assesses companies according to how they meet that practice. Who's on it? Some very interesting people indeed. One of the advisors has a job title, the Managing Director of Corporate Racial Equity at the company she works for. Sure. She's wrote a piece recently about how companies that meaningfully prioritise racial and economic equity will retain top talent and have a competitive edge. Junior B Corp consultants that I saw say they specialise in sustainability and what they describe as social impact action plans. I also saw one senior B Corp executive lamenting what he described as the emotional reactions of white managers in dealing with implicit bias issues. As you can see, some very heavily laden progressive language in their work. But finally, one of the most interesting, I think, comments we saw from senior B Corp leaders was its executive director in the UK, who said on LinkedIn that it's a global network working to reinvent our economic system so that it works for each and every one of us.
Reinvent our global economic system.
Mm-hmm. Well, Coutts is a member, and indeed, as you've said, do you think that the actions of Coutts recently in its B Corp certification work for each and every one of us in its
didn't work very well for me and perhaps for many others. Now, so let's say I'm a company and I want to get the B Corp certification. What's the process I have to go through?
Well, there are it's a score of 80 out of 200 on their impact assessment. Or GBNews Investigates took that impact assessment today, and it was quite extraordinary, some of the questions that they wanted us to look at. And an inclusive recruitment and hiring process focusing around equality, diversity and inclusion was really at the heart of this offering. So much of it revolved around this. They want to know if you actively recruit from organisations or services that serve individuals from what they describe as underrepresented communities, such as ethnic minorities and the LGBT community. They're very interested if you ask about the incarceration history of potential applicants to the company. And you also get additional points if your company is led or majority-led by anyone from these, again, underrepresented groups. So you get 0.41 points if you have female leaders and 0.81 points if you have a majority-led female executive C-suite in your company. The same is true if you're led by individuals from underrepresented racial or ethnic minorities. You also have extra points for having a group explicitly responsible for diversity, equity or inclusion. Coutts, of course, famously had its racial equality task force, which, using EDI-related investigations, changed the debanking process that bank has. They also reward and give many points for diversity improvement goals. They give you points for having equity analysis on pay by demographic factors. Identity. Mm. But here's the most shocking bit. You get just 0.09 points for managing the privacy and security of a client and their customer data.
Well, let's have a think about this, shall we? Because Coutts breached my privacy, so can they remain a member of B Corp? Should we report them to B Corp?
I think there is clearly questions for Coutts and B Corp to answer here in how they assess how companies become certified. Because clearly there is such a focus on this ESG-related assessment criteria. They're clearly very focused on the diversity and the identity of workers and indeed leadership, as we know that Coutts was. But when it comes to some of the stuff that really matters to customers and businesses alike, the transparency of data, the security of data and personal information, well, that doesn't seem to get the same level of award.
No, and you talk about underrepresented groups, but it's interesting because I'm looking here at a company that is a B Corp company. They're a recruitment company, and they are very, very clear. They're part of an initiative called No Turning Back. They have goals to work towards 20% of the wider marketing sector to come from black, Asian, minority, ethnic communities, and for 20% to stay in the sector and reach the top jobs. 20% of the population are not from those categories. So actually, what they're pushing on firms is for white British born to be underrepresented. In a sense, Charlie, don't you think that this organisation that claims to be about diversity and fairness and equity and equality, actually, doesn't there come a point where people say, well, you're beginning to discriminate against us?
And clearly these requirements in terms of numbers just don't tally. They just don't add up with the population as we know it in Great Britain, for example. And we've seen how this kind of thinking has played out recently in Britain with the government's own equality drive within the Royal Air Force, where now dozens of white men have successfully sued the government and the RAF over them being illegitimately removed from recruitment programmes. So clearly a huge scandal in the brewing here.
Charlie, thank you. Good work. And folks, this is just the beginning on this, I promise you. We're going to find out a lot more as the next week or two goes by.